Well, could have been worse. Welcome to the Timeless Odyssey, exploring science fiction through the ages. And I'm Bill Stone. Today we have the Secret Master of Fandom's review of James Gunn's Superman. Now, I'll usually just take it as read that if you've come to this video looking for a review, you've probably already watched James Gunn's Superman, or you don't care if it's spoiled. Nevertheless, for safety, we should probably issue a...
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All hands prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert, and that is because I am a secret master of fandom. That means that the fandom is strong with me. This is neither a boast nor a brag. This is just where you find yourself after having watched, read, and listened to over 100 years worth of science fiction. The problem with secret masters of fandom is we are cursed. We just can't see all the new stuff without seeing the entire century that came before, sometimes more. And you often discover that very little is original, and it generally interferes with your ability to enjoy things. Now, one of the things I don't do is outrage reviews. There are a lot of reviewers on YouTube who are simply actors portraying outrage because outrage sells. They hate everything with a knee-jerk reflex because their viewers expect them to hate things. This causes a weird feedback loop between fans and popular reviewers where ultimately nobody likes anything. But I don't do outrage. Unlike the other reviewers, I am the adult in this room. So my hot take on this. It's not a terrible Superman movie, but it's also not a great Superman movie. The only truly great Superman movie is Richard Donner's movie from 1978. That was the only time that everyone involved hit every single note pitch perfectly. This is not even really a Superman movie. It's a Justice League movie featuring Superman. Well, actually, not a Justice League movie, but rather a Justice Gang movie. Why wouldn't they just call that Super Friends? I mean, that's just about as silly. And by the way, Guy Gardner, you Green Lantern, you, did no one tell you that the only good guys who are going around being called a gang hang out with a talking Great Dane? The optics on that name are very, very super bad. The movie is also 2 hours of CGI, more CGI, and more CGI. I'm morally certain that there are more CGI than there are human actors in scenes. Now, the basic premise of the film, that Superman has ended a war between two European nations, is a fascinating one. This is something that's never really been done in Superman lore. It happened once, non-canonically, in the late 1930s, not long after Superman's debut. This was a couple of years before the U.S.'s entry into World War II, and while Germany and USSR were still semi-allies. But in a short, one-page strip, Superman captured Hitler and Stalin, brought them to an international court where they were tried for war crimes. Canonically, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, Superman's creators, had to come up with a really lame reason why Superman just didn't fly over and end the war overnight. And that was this. When Clark Kent went in for his Army physical, he accidentally used his X-ray vision when told to read an eye chart. When he then used his X-ray vision, he accidentally read the eye chart, in the room on the other side. And the Army doctors decided that his vision was too poor and classified him as 4F, that is, physically unfit for duty. In the 1980s, it was retconned that Adolf Hitler had come into possession of the Spear of Destiny. That's the spear that pierced Christ's side during the crucifixion. Said spear had the magical power to turn every American superhero into the Nazi cause, should they come within its sphere of influence. However, for reasons of continuity with the real world, Superman has always steered clear of involvement in warfare. So the idea of him actually stopping a war, well, that's a fascinating idea. Unfortunately, what dramatic impact it might have had is totally undercut by the fact that it's revealed that the whole war was actually a nefarious scheme by Lex Luthor to become king of one of the nations involved in the war. Ultimately, the movie is a paint-by-number CGI action fest, and frankly, I'm getting really bored with that. I'm bored by it in science fiction. I'm bored by it in fantasy. I'm bored by it in superheroes. Let me see. A CGI Superman fighting a CGI kaiju. I am pretty sure we've seen kaiju fights somewhere in the world since Jurassic Park first did it in 1993. A Superman fighting another Superman who's not quite Bizarro. I'm pretty sure that was what was done in Superman 3. Admittedly, it is much better executed here, but you're comparing 1983 and 2025 special effects. We have a situation in this film where Lex Luthor creates a pocket universe to serve as his own little personal prison. The entry into the pocket universe is unstable and eventually expands to the point where it essentially creates a giant fissure that cuts Metropolis nearly in half. It is, of course, entirely healed the moment that Mr. Terrific of the Justice Gang is able to close it. So, okay, all right. Fair play. I am the first guy to admit that Superman healing the San Andreas Fault in Donner's film was kind of silly. Fault lines don't operate like that, something that I knew even as a 13-year-old. But it's another thing entirely to do it in a modern film where 20-story buildings are toppled or torn off in half. I mean, literally, a couple of them are torn right down the center, only to have them miraculously slammed back together when the fissure seals itself. It's one of the many reasons I didn't like Man of Steel. A Superman movie shouldn't be 9/11 times 1,000. Metropolis is effectively destroyed, and its entire underlying infrastructure either destroyed or massively unsafe. There were trillions in property damage alone. It would probably be better to simply bulldoze the entire city and rebuild from scratch. This is why I think a filmmaker should always ask themselves the question, I can do anything I want with CGI, but should I? The answer, more frequently than not, is no. The film borrows from numerous eras of DC history, and in so doing, it does none of them justice. I could list the Easter eggs until I'm blue in the face, but there are other channels who do that. Suffice to say that as a lifelong Superman fan, I see exactly where everything comes from, and it was generally done better in comics. Speaking of which, this really is just a comic book come to life. This is not necessarily a good thing. Through Endgame, the MCU was pretty adept at adapting their comics, but not being slavishly devoted to the original lore. And this worked extremely well until they were faced with what we call the Thanos problem, something they've yet to figure it out an answer for. However, taking anything seen in a comic book and using it as a basis for action doesn't always work. Yes, Superman has fought giant monsters, giant robots, weird aliens, and all manner of comics book actions in his 87-year history. But that doesn't mean he should do it in film. The result looks like well-animated CGI that has no bearing whatsoever on real-world physics. And I can't let the inclusion of Krypto the Superdog slip by. Krypto was an invention of an era when comic books audience was 12-year-old boys. They loved dogs, so including a super dog seemed like a nice marketing move. However, Krypto has long been gone since Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985. As comics audiences matured, Krypto started to look silly. It also raised serious questions whose answers can only really lead to sticking Krypto in a box filled with kryptonite until he's dead. It is an uncontrollable animal with Superman's powers. It would destroy whole cities just chasing cats. Superpowers work with humans when their minds are controlling them. They do not work with animals who have no self-control and that cannot even be disciplined by Kryptonians. Another interesting thing is that the film sets up in its first shots that metahumans have been in existence for 300 years. That is, people with amazing powers have been around since before the American Revolution. This would have caused almost everything in history from 1725 onwards to be totally different from our own history. Metropolis in 2025 should not look nothing like what we see in the film. Why, for example, would King George not enlist metahumans in the British Army and Navy? The rebellion would have been crushed before it even started, unless, of course, the rebels also had metahumans of their own. In that case, the American Revolution would largely have been a fight between super beings. I said it before that, forever actually, that one of the reasons that the Snyderverse just didn't work is because you can't put superheroes into the real world. If a being as powerful as Superman, even a benevolent and helpful one, actually existed, the nations of the Earth would band together to destroy him. You must put your superheroes into a world that will at least tolerate them. The Snyderverse was not one of those universes. However, going in the exact opposite direction means that your 2025 world is going to look like nothing like the world that you see outside the window. And this concept is, in fact, briefly touched upon at the end of the film when a couple of CIA analysts note that the metahumans now call the shots. I'd also mention the genetics of that situation. If metahumans had appeared 300 years ago, then today everyone would be a metahuman. It's just genetics. With 300 years to interbreed, we wouldn't be Homo sapiens anymore. We'd be something like Homo metasapiens. And one item, by the way, of pure cinematography that people have noticed are the occasional strange perspectives and odd camera angles. And I figured out why this is. It's because this film was made for 3D. Now, I may plunk the money down to watch it in 3D this Friday. I don't know. But I'm reasonably sure that the weird camera angles and perspectives were done in order to facilitate things appearing to fly out of the screen. And a couple of small things. Kansans do not have Southern accents. In one point, it's explicitly used to make Ma Kent look like an idiot. Stargirl and Superman and Lois treated those of us in my part of the country with respect. James Gunn has made them into a punchline. My God, did I just say the CW did something right? Also, Supergirl makes a cameo appearance. It turns out that she's a skanky party animal who goes to other worlds with red suns to get hammered and probably have casual sex. No doubt she'll have an OnlyFans account because goodness knows we need to further normalize prostitution. So that's the hot take. That's all you really need to know about the movie. It's not terrible. It's not great. And DC, you should have gone with my pitch. I pitched it for free. When this whole thing inevitably crashes and burns and you want to fix it, give me a call. However, there's a much bigger issue at play, and that's why this is a mediocre film. And here's where my take is going to be totally different than everyone else's. I suspect that many people will take issue with it. It has to do with Gen X. Now, I am a proud sitting member of the official Gen X Council. I am proud of my generation, everything we've accomplished, and everything that we have yet to accomplish. However, artistic creativity isn't one of our strong suits. We like to talk about Gen X movies, Gen X TV shows, Gen X music, but the thing is, we weren't making those movies, TV shows, and music. That was the boomers. We were watching movies and TV, and we were listening to music largely made by boomers. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, we were consumers of great art made by boomers, with us as the target demographic. Circa 2005, Gen X started taking the reins of creativity, and it turns out that we suck at it. We really, really suck. Gen X doesn't create original material. All we can do is attempt, badly in general, to recreate our childhoods. Oh, a few of us still had some mojo for a while. Doctor Who was great until the day of the Doctor, and then Stephen Moffat lost his mojo after that. Russell T. Davies was also great with Doctor Who, however, he's proven in recent years that he's lost his mojo entirely. Gen X doesn't have a Godfather, a Platoon, or an Apocalypse Now. We don't have original science fiction. We have no Gene Roddenberry nor a George Lucas. We have people who try to recapture and fix the science fiction of our youth. The result is uniform garbage that cannot be glossed over with CGI. We don't have a Martin Scorsese. We don't have a John Carpenter. We don't have a J. Michael Straczynski. We don't have a Cecil B. DeMille. We can't even make big dumb action movies the way that boomers did in the 1980s. We keep trying to remake Terminator 2 and failing miserably. And one of my favorite big dumb action movies, Independence Day, made by boomers. Gen X tried to make a sequel and failed miserably. Our big dumb action movies are like Superman, an attempt to recapture our childhood memories of how we felt seeing Richard Donner's Superman and failing. You know all that children's programming that my kids used to watch on the Disney Channel? Yeah, made by boomers. And we actually remade Charlie's Angels twice. That was a mediocre 1970s TV series with only 6 things that kept it on the air, and they were attached to 3 hot chicks. It never deserved to be remade, ever. Gen X's creativity lies in technology. In my field, computer science, we stood on the shoulders of the giants who came before us to bring the things that we saw in Star Trek into reality. That's where we excel. We do not excel at art. As a Gen Xer, I dislike coming to that conclusion, but we've been in charge in Hollywood for 20 years. In that time, there has been very, very little that can be termed good art that came from a Gen Xer. Hopefully, millennials and Gen Z will fare better. I fear that we may have accidentally bred artistic creativity out of the species. So at the end of any given review, we like to ask ourselves, is it any good? Well, if it hasn't been made clear before, I'll do so now. It's okay. It doesn't have the horror of the Snyderverse, nor the heart of Donner's Superman. It is overly reliant on CGI to the point where it feels more like a 1980s comic book rather than a motion picture. Someday, very, very soon, CGI will be adequate to totally replace human actors. It's nearly there already, as is clearly obvious from this film. Will I actually go pay to see this film? Probably not. I saw what I needed to thanks to the French and their screener. Do I recommend that you see it? Nah. Wait for it to hit streaming. That should be like September. That's all I have to say about that. I would certainly love to keep the conversation going, so please leave your comments, questions, and nasty remarks, and I'll do my best to respond to you. And of course, do like, sub, hit the notification bell, share me on social media, and tell all of your friends, family, neighbors, pets, and livestock to do the same. If you'd like to follow me on X, I am at SYL Ranch. So thanks for watching Timeless Odyssey, exploring science fiction through the ages. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.